Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. Today, we are talking about all things SQE. So, this is hopefully of interest to anybody who is subjecting themselves to this new assessment. People who are taking a law degree and are about to graduate just now, or recent graduates, or perhaps people who are already working in the legal domain and they're looking to qualify as solicitors to progress with their study and progress with their career and possibly improve their salaries a little bit. So I'm Yanis. You're joining us on YouTube. Remember that this is going to be available on the replay later on. So if you don't catch it live, then it's still worthwhile watching the replay. And hopefully we can get a little bit of interaction together by you putting messages in the chat with all your questions and things that you need to know more about. And then we can have a little bit of a discussion that helps your needs. Hopefully, we can have a Q&A type session where people who are currently engaged in the process can get some things clarified. So all this is done for your benefit, and it is great fun for me to interact with students and potential candidates for this exam for a variety of backgrounds. I learn a lot through you and what you're experiencing, and hopefully I can help you a little bit along this journey. We already have a few people joining the live, which is fantastic. You've got a chat function that's right there. So if you can put something in the chat to say hi, that would be awesome. And also because the functionality of this thing is a little bit limited. So if everybody can hear me okay and see me okay, it would be awesome if you put like a thumbs up or something, or hit the like button so I know that everybody is connected and we're doing well. In the meantime, I will offer you like a super brief introduction of what it is that I'm talking about. So what is this SQE? This is the Solicitor's Qualifying Examination. It is the way in which the pathway to becoming a lawyer in England is changing. It's different from what we used to deal with, because maybe some of you are my students from a previous occasion in one of the universities that I work in. The traditional pathway to become a solicitor was finishing a qualifying law degree and then taking the LPC, which was the legal practice course, and then doing a training contract with a law firm. And then after you finish your training contract, then you would qualify. Now, the SRA, which is the Solicitors Regulation Authority, in its wisdom, decided to change this and turn it into something that approximates a continental or an American bar exam. If we've got any of our American friends in the audience, say hi. What's happening therefore now is that you no longer have a qualifying law degree. You can study anything you want. So anything that you study at higher education level at university is good enough as an entry point to you becoming a solicitor. And then you have to sit this exam. Now, what is this exam about? There are two key components to this exam, fantastically named SQE1 and SQE2. And it's testing what they call the functioning legal knowledge. So the fundamental legal knowledge that a lawyer is supposed to exhibit when they're actually practicing out there and servicing their clients. SQE1 is the fundamental substantive knowledge that perhaps you have come across in your law degree, if you've done this, and it is examined through a multiple choice test. The second part is SQE2, which is more the advocacy and professional skills. How do you deal with a client? How do you interview them? How do you do a case note? How do you interact in a courtroom in accordance with the civil and the criminal procedure rules? So all these practical skills that the lawyer is meant to have and is meant to exhibit in order to effectively carry out their role. Now, this is a little bit tricky for us, to be honest, because if you know who I am already, I'm a full-time law academic. We are used to dealing with the substantive issues of law. So if you go to law school, at university, anywhere in the UK, you will spend a lot of time learning about the legal concepts, the black letter law as it is expressed, and then a little bit of theory and a little bit of discussion around the rationale that shapes the law. The exam doesn't really deal with any of the added theoretical bits to it. It deals very specifically with the details of the substantive content. So, what is examined in SQE1, and actually, we've got another one of these assessments coming up in, I think, on the 20th of July. So, in about a month's time, a couple of months' time. What is tested in SQE1 is very much the detail, and it's tested through a multiple choice test. So it is a departure, if you want, both from what we used to teach at law school, and if you're a law graduate already, you probably appreciate this difference. And it is very different from the previous system that allowed one to qualify as a solicitor. Now, just in case anybody here is trying to become a barrister, the qualification system for barristers has not changed. So if you're not familiar with the English classification of these terms, the barristers are the people who appear in court and argue in court. So they're primarily the litigators. The solicitors are your more traditional lawyers that do all the background work before something actually gets into court. They can themselves represent clients in court up until a certain level, but most of the court audience is done by barristers. The barrister part of becoming a lawyer in this jurisdiction remains the same, but it's the solicitor part which has significantly changed and is subject to this exam, the SQE, which is what we're talking about today. So hopefully this is not telling you stuff that you already know and you're finding this informative. So if you're still with us and you are finding this informative, hit the like button so we know that everybody's still connected. Now, we got some appreciation of what this is and what it's trying to do. How about we move on and discuss how would you go around preparing? Well, there are various options that one can prepare. My primary focus is trying to help the people who are doing this independently. Now, how could you arrive? What do I mean by saying you could be an independent candidate for the SQE? If you're already working in the legal profession, it could be that you're a foreign lawyer, right? You have qualified in a foreign jurisdiction and you're working in the UK at the moment in the legal field. You could be working in-house. You could be working as a paralegal. You could be working as a legal advisor. You could be the counsel for some sort of business or general counsel for a bigger corporation. These jobs do not require you to be qualified. So you can very well participate in this part of the profession and in this legal domain very effectively without seeking qualification. But if you have been at this for a while, you will notice this peculiar thing. Salaries for people who are working in the legal domain but are not qualified, they hit a certain ceiling. So if you've been working, if say you are a Greek lawyer like myself, or you're a French lawyer, you could have been working in this jurisdiction for 15, 20 years. You will find that your salary is going to hit a ceiling at something like 90 or 100,000 pounds a year. I know this might sound like a lot of money, but trust me, if you've been working for 20 years doing this difficult stuff, it probably doesn't feel like a lot of money to you. What is it that can help you break this barrier and go above the 100,000? Usually is the registration and the qualification as a solicitor. Businesses and the wider public puts a premium on the qualification as a solicitor. So many people find that in order to breach that level and go for more senior positions or become, say, the head of a legal service within a corporation, you need to take this extra step and get yourself legally qualified. In practice, you will not be doing anything different. You will probably do exactly the same things you did before. But having the validation of being registered with the regulator as a qualified solicitor and being able to carry out qualified work, as it's called, will allow you to breach that limit. So you will find that you were hitting jobs that were up till, say, 100,000 pounds right here. And if you get your qualification, then you can start applying for jobs that are 150, 160K a year, and nobody's going to question why you're doing it. It will just appear natural. Good idea. Don't you think? Everybody likes a bit more money. So that could be the motivation behind you becoming a solicitor. And now that you figured out that there's this pathway to do this through the SQE, you've got an avenue that you can pursue in order to achieve this. The question is, you set around preparing. If we take this scenario that you're in full-time employment and you seek to take this exam, and you're preparing by yourself, you're not a student in an institution, you don't have a tutor to help you, how are you actually going to go about it? Um, Quite a lot of the work that I've been doing in these last few years has been in addressing the needs exactly of those people who are studying independently. So if you look through my YouTube channel, and I will put some links down in the description below for you that you can follow up later. Also, if you're watching on the replay, you can also find these links down there. There are some things that you can do to help you, primarily around informing yourself what are the knowledge contents that you need to be on top of in order to prepare for this exam. It is possible, especially if you have experience of working in the legal domain, to study independently and be successful in the exam, especially SQE1, which is the substantive bits examined with a multiple choice question that we're primarily focusing on today. You can do it. You are going to need time because what you're engaged in at work might not necessarily cover the totality of the subjects examined by SQE1, but you can do it. I can recommend some titles for you, some material that you're going to find in links down in the description below that you can click, and they'll take you to Amazon, and you can get some of the books that I recommend to help you along that path. My concern for you is not so much getting on top of the substantive content. My concern is more about familiarizing yourselves with the format of the exam and having the confidence that you can effectively anticipate what these multiple questions are going to be like. If you're successful in SQE1 and then you move for SQE2, then things are getting a little trickier. And the reason for that is that SQE2, as I mentioned already, contains all the odd advocacy skills, all the real stuff that the lawyer is going to have to do. And they're examined by exercises that you have to fill in, mock interviews, oral examinations, and all of that stuff that are very, very tricky. Now, that is the point that I feel less confident that you can be successful in unless you have assistance from somebody. That is why, if you're already participating in this domain, I already have some discussions with you and some of your colleagues through our Facebook group. I'm going to put a link to my Facebook group where we talk about these things down in the description, but there are also various SQE preparation groups on Facebook that people are interacting and trying to get support for these issues. What you find by reading the messages in those groups is precisely the problem in understanding the format and the nature and the structure of the exam and preparing yourselves for the adequate presentation of these softer skills. How are you going to interview a client? What is involved in this? If you're asked to address something in a police station, what do you do then? Following the various aspects of the civil procedure rules to communicate with the judge in the process of a trial. What is the paperwork like? How do you fill in the forms? These things, universities at undergraduate level are not very good at teaching students. Actually, as part of the LLB, we don't cover these things at all. Finding help and support to get to do this if you're an independent candidate can be difficult. Now, I do not know whether the various options that you have available through the private providers are sufficient to help you through this. And remember, this is specifically in reference to SQE2. Barbary, QLTS School, the University of Law, BPP, they're all offering SQE preparatory courses. They tend to be very expensive. I've got a video discussing these options that you will also find down in the description. They're very expensive. They're very labor intensive. Whether they actually are effective in preparing students, I don't know, because all of this is very recent and we don't have enough data on the success of their candidates to be able to point at one and say, this one is value for money and has got good chances of success, while the other one is performing less well. If some of you in the audience right now have been part of these preparation courses and you would like to share your experience with us, please put a message either in the chat, or if you're watching this on the replay, just put a message down in the comments box under the video to let us know how you got on. Because I think it's very important to share these experiences with everybody else, so everybody can make informed decisions as to what is the appropriate way to prepare. Now, taking a step back and coming to the first assessment, which is SQE1 and the multiple choice test, that bit is going to be easier. You need to go through either somebody who explains what the content is. I've got some videos in that direction. Or you go through the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority website, which explains what the exam covers and what is the substantive content you need to be on top of. And then you can make yourselves a checklist. I love checklists. I'm terrible in doing things in Excel, but I'm actually, very fond of checklists. You make yourself like a big checklist and you go, this is what I need to know for, say, contract law. It covers these topics. Tack, 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 tack. This is what I need to know for business law. Then here are these topics. This is what I need to know for professional ethics. These are the topics. And you then try to get yourself the resources, the books that you can use in order to teach yourself or remind yourself, if you have studied this already or if you're practicing in the area, learn or revise in a structured way so you can actually tick all these boxes and you can get that information. Is it possible to do it? Again, as regards SQE1, I think you are in a good position, especially if you're already qualified, especially if you're already working in the legal domain, to prepare for at least that part alone. How much time is it going to take you? I think it depends on whether you're in full-time employment at the moment or not. If you have, say, finished university and you graduate in the summer, like you finished your exams just about now, like most of my the students that I've got at the moment that are in the final year, they're about to finish their exams now, and they have effectively a gap in responsibilities, at least study responsibilities, from June onwards. If you were starting to prepare for this, and actually some of my students this is exactly what they're planning to do. If one of you is in the audience, just kind of hit the like button so I know you're there. What you're going to do is put all your study material aside for your final year and then dig into the checklist that I mentioned about the FLK for SQE1. And work your way through these titles and make the notes that you need to make in order to be sure that you have an understanding of the substantive content, and spend 6 to 8 months on this. I think you're probably going to need, because it's an enormous volume of material. This exam covers the totality of legal knowledge over all the fields that one will have come across in their law degree, and then some, right? Because we don't teach everything in the law degree, at least not as an obligatory course. So if you're full-time, if you're a recent graduate, you're just jumping out from doing a law degree to preparing for the SQE, I'm thinking 6 to 8 months of full-time engagement is what you're aiming for. If you are in employment, and you can only devote time when you come back home, if you don't have family responsibilities or weekends, or you need to take some time off work in order to prepare, I think you should plan for a year. I think otherwise it might become too a stressful task if you're trying to cover the totality of FLK for SQE1 while maintaining family obligations, keeping the kids fed, and keeping everything running in your household, and also keeping with your work responsibilities. If you try to do this in less than a year, it might be tricky. Now, some people also study in different ways. Some people show higher levels of commitment. Also appreciate that this is going to be spectacularly boring, especially if you're doing it on your own. It can be grading to go through all the subjects. Some subjects you're more keen on, some subjects you're not. I teach contract and business law for a living, so I can read through the contract law material, and I think they're awesome and they're a great deal of fun. If you make me read through criminal law, land, equity, and all of this stuff that you will need to know for this exam, I would find it hard going. So I can imagine having come home from a day's worth of work and then having made dinner for the kids and then having to sit down at about 8 o'clock in the evening in order to prepare notes on an equity exam, I might not be the kind of most motivated person in the world, right? So keep that in mind as well. Your mental health needs to survive this process. So what is it that I'm suggesting? 6 to 8 months of full-time engagement. If you're a recent graduate or if you're in between jobs, for instance, I would say a year of preparation for SQE1 if you are in full-time employment and have got a range of other responsibilities at the same time. Does this sound demoralizing? I hope not. Perhaps it does sound demoralizing, but remember that there is a very significant price tag attached to these exams. They will cost you a great deal of money. And a great deal of money just for the registration for the exams, never mind the amount of money you're going to have to pay in order to purchase the books. Hey, Reese says, hi in the chat. Hi, how are you doing? Nice to have you here. So we are discussing the troublesome pathway through the SQE exam. Now, since it's going to cost you so much money and since it requires that level of commitment, I think you need to plan for it carefully. If it looks like you won't have the time to prepare effectively and it's going to stress you out, maybe you need to rethink the time that you can carve out to be able to do this. On the plus side of all of this, there are frequent opportunities to sit these exams. There are like 3 or 4 sits per year. And the location, because these are unfortunately location based, because they're invigilated exams, there's a variety of locations around in London and around the UK and also around the world. And there are availabilities at every quarter in a variety of places and jurisdictions and locations for you to sit this exam. So it's not like a one-off thing that happens in, say, central London once a year, and you need to kind of force yourself to meet that deadline. You will have more opportunities to do this. And I think as they're moving forward, because the demand seems to be quite significant, they're increasing the opportunities for people to actually sit this exam at the location of their choosing and at multiple points in the year to allow them to effectively prepare. Right. So what could be an outcome perhaps of a discussion as to whether you should approach this as an independent candidate? I think it is risky, but in the absence of additional information, I do not feel comfortable telling you, go and sign on with this provider or that provider, and that will give you the best chance of success. I think this is something that we're yet to see. Hopefully, we will have enough data in a year or so to be able to make exact recommendations, but not yet. Now, just in case anybody here is thinking about it, is the SQE the only pathway available? Because quite a lot of my students are coming to me with a question, should we go for the traditional pathway, which was the LPC training contract and all the rest of it, or should we go for the SQE? Now, if you're wondering this is a good question. The LPC route is not free, is also expensive. The LPC is a sort of postgraduate vocational qualification. Some institutions are offering you the opportunity to do the LPC together with a master's degree. So you end up with 2 qualifications at the end, one academic, one vocational, which makes it sound like a better deal, like you're getting more value because you're getting the dual qualification. Now, should you, if the opportunity is open to you, should you go for the LPC? Now, you will have this opportunity if you are an earlier graduate, because people who have, it's only people who started their study from September 2021 that are obligated to take the SQE. People who had started their study at an earlier point, they can still choose between the traditional pathway and the new one. So should you go for the tested version of the LPC and training contract, or should you go for the SQE? Now, this can be answered this way. Are you confident that you will find a training contract, which means a vocational placement with a law firm, to be able to continue the pathway to qualification if you choose to go for the LPC? The problem that we're having at the moment is that most of my graduates who have approached law firms asking whether they still offer the LPC, they're getting a negative answer. It seems that the entire sector has fallen behind the idea of the SQE, and they are now only accepting candidates through the SQE route. They are no longer offering training contracts. Now, I don't know if any of you have tried this already or how far you are on your pathway to qualification, but getting a training contract was a pain already. So it hasn't been easy to obtain a training contract with a law firm, and it has been very difficult for a very long time. The domain that I'm primarily working in, which is corporate and business law, has been horrifically difficult because most of my students are going for the highly rated, like very big known law firms, the kind of magic circle stuff, Clifford Chance and Sherman and Freshfields and all of that. Getting a training contract with these guys was always horrifically tricky. If you're going for high street law firms and perhaps smaller outfits, it was possible to get training contracts, but in domains most of the students did not want to do. Because most students do not want to qualify as criminal lawyers, they don't want to go into family law or immigration. These were the topics that still generated training contracts. The traditional corporate route is saturated and has been saturated for a very long time. And the big law firms now are just not taking people for training contracts because they've shifted the entire recruitment down to the SQE pathway. So the question isn't so much, is it technically available? Yes, it is. You can still find providers that are offering the LPC. You can still find the occasional law firm that offers a training contract. But is this a realistic pathway? Some people have also asked me, is it worth doing a combination? So you do the LPC, and then if you don't manage to find a training contract, then do SQE2. So you kind of combine the two systems and then qualify through the SQE route. I think this is unnecessarily expensive because the LPC is going to cost you a fortune to begin with, and it is an unpleasant and difficult course. If you have to do SQE2 on top of the LPC later, you're adding like a few £1,000s to your pathway, and then you still have to finish all this and still find somewhere to finish your qualifying work experience. Now, with the SQE pathway, you do not need a training contract, but you need to have some work in the legal domain broadly defined, or to have done some already. This is what they call qualifying legal experience. It's a lot easier, but it's going to be super long and super costly if you've gone through the LPC to then do the SQE to then do that. So what is my recommendation to my students? I tell them that we have to bite the bullet. Unfortunately, we have to go down the SQE route. And then the question becomes, how can you do the SQE effectively in a cost-efficient and time-efficient manner in order to achieve progression along the career path that you've set for yourselves? And this is what brings us back to the discussions that we're having today, and a sort of reflection of how can we best support each other, and how can we, as as the teachers of law, how we can support our students to be able to do this. I'm hoping that this is a bit ambitious, right? But what can we do? I'm hoping that better resource online and better information in terms of short videos that explain the concepts, or videos that revise the concepts for you and offer you some structured information about this exam, some information on how to prepare for multiple choice questions and what that entails. Things like, all these things that I link down in the description that you can watch later. All these things can be helpful both for the people who are doing this independently, but also for the people who are getting a support from a tutor, or they're getting a support from an institution, but they need some kind of top-up assistance to plug in the gaps when they feel that they're having weaknesses. So my attempt at contributing to your efforts is through those videos. Now, whether this is the best way or an effective way, I'm not sure, but at least it's free, right? So what's the harm? It's better to offer people quite a lot of stuff and hope that something sticks and has a positive contribution, that not give it at all because you're worried it might not be the total package. So the information that you're going to find available for free online on things like YouTube is not going to cover the totality of your needs, but hopefully is going to put you along the pathway of success in addition to everything else that you're doing. Now, talking about free, all this stuff is free. My live streams are free. The information I put on YouTube is free. My Facebook group and everything I put up there is free. But if you guys want to support me in this effort, then you can either click one of the affiliate links that I've got to Amazon if you find them in one of my videos, or you can go over to Spotify, where I've got a podcast that offers a subscription version. So for only 99p per month, you can listen to me talk on a podcast. But it's absolutely not necessary. The idea is to contribute to the efforts of everybody trying to survive this horrible experience that is this exam, and to try and assist in the best way possible. Now, if you guys want to come and do a law degree, you can also find me in the places that I'm teaching, and we can do that together. Now, this was designed as a Q&A session, so if anybody has got any questions or any thoughts or any observations, feel free to stick them into the chat box that you see right there, or alternatively, after the stream has finished, when it's available on the replay, you can put your questions or on your thoughts in the comments under the video, and I will make sure that I respond to all of those, so we can get a discussion going. Also, I'm going to share the link to the Facebook group that is sitting there as a standing discussion forum, so we can have we can continue our discussions or have a few more discussions about the topics that you're interested in through the Facebook group. Now, what happens if you don't have a law degree? Now, this might seem surprising to some, but there is actually a very significant proportion of people who make it into the legal profession that do not have a law degree. The traditional pathway into this was through what we call the GDL, which was the Graduate Diploma in Law. This was a conversion course that taught you the legal basics, effectively the content of what you have in SQE1 in a very compressed fashion. And if you already had a higher education qualification, then you would do the GDL, and then you would be able to get the qualifying law degree that you needed to then do the LPC, to then apply for a training contract and all the rest of it. Now, good news is that since a law degree as such is no longer required for the SQE, the process is open to everybody who has a higher education qualification, either from this jurisdiction or from another country for that matter. It doesn't really matter. The question is, how do these people actually manage? Well, they manage through hard work. And the people that I've taught on the GDL, they've been the most committed students that I've ever seen. It seems that if you've only got a year available, it concentrates the mind. So you really get into it. That's why I'm thinking, if you spend a year preparing for the SQE, even if you are in full-time employment, because it's kind of working in your head and you get the motivation to do it, you're probably gonna manage fairly well. Now, the people from the GDL, from the non-law degree route that ended up in the profession, strangely had better employment outcomes. Do you know why? The reason is that most of the law firms actually appreciate people with a varied background, people who have done business, people who have done marketing, people who have done some other study in the social sciences, even the people with technical backgrounds from engineering and so on. The law firms have enough lawyers that have spent their entire education studying law. So they do appreciate the variety of skills that can come from somebody who is from a non-legal background. And of course, this being England, there's the hidden thing that they do love people who've been to Cambridge and Oxford. So if you had been to Cambridge, actually, if you have been to Cambridge or Oxford, let me know and I'll get you a job. We love these guys. This is the country that we're living in, yeah? Now, if you have been there, even if you have done, something in arts, a completely liberal art degree, or you have done, history or theology, they would still hire you in a law firm because they're so excited to have people from Cambridge and Oxford. But, despite this, there's a good market, there's a good jobs market for the people that have varied qualifications and different backgrounds that make it into law. So if this applies to one of the people that we've got in here that, in this live stream, you guys are in luck, because if you've got an accountancy degree, a business degree, an engineering degree, and then you want to become a solicitor through the SQE route, you're going to be the number one candidate for when it comes to facing a hiring panel. But perhaps, and that depends on your motivation and your general competence, perhaps you have a steeper hill to climb when it comes to getting on top of all the functioning legal content that you need to succeed in SQE1 and SQE2. All right, guys. So I hope that you have found this useful. It helps me get it off my chest, because everything that we talk about these days is SQE this and SQE that. And I think academics spend a lot of time talking to each other about these stuff, but we don't effectively communicate what this is to the audience. So thank you very much for joining me in this live stream today. I hope you got some interesting and useful information. If you like this, hit the like button so more people can see it and I can do it again next time. And there will be a lot more live streams coming in the summer, especially as we're getting closer to SQE1, that we can get into the nitty-gritties and discuss more about the substance of what the multiple choice questions are going to be and how to succeed in those. So once again, guys, thank you very much for tuning in today, and I'll see you again soon.